Director, Caitlin Holt, referred to the Sunlight Daylight report and your visuals, and I think she stated that window 155 and 142 had been misrepresented. Do you recall her comments around that? And could you just very quickly respond, please?
I do, Chair. Thank you. Those windows were highlighted simply because they were the ones. There were 4 windows, as members will note from the report, that had a reduction of more than 40%, and those are the windows that were highlighted. There are other windows, again, as is in the report, that have reductions of more than 20%. But in the presentation, just the worst affected windows, I suppose, were the ones highlighted.
Thank you, and I hope that's to the satisfaction of the objectors. It was very important just for you to mention that. Members, just finally, are there any further questions in terms of clarification or any additional questions that you would like to ask officers? No. So, members.
Sorry,
Yeah.
if I may, just
yes.
a question to Michael to kind of, if I may.
Yeah.
Partly in response to earlier questions and my own, as regards impact on the conservation area, and notwithstanding its initial comments on the potential or no impact. Can I just be clear with him? I used the term, as was used by others, the wash line effect. Would the term sight line, in other words, consistency of height, etc., be an appropriate term? And would you seek to ensure that is consistent right along Grange Road, or walk, I should get that right? Would I be right in saying that that's what you would expect to see?
Thank you, Chair. I think what I said is visibility, and obviously presence of a proposal is a key consideration in assessing the impact of a proposal on a conservation area. The character of an area, the amenity of an area is established by its built form, and you know, stepping and adjustment of heights are pretty common in an urban context, in an urban setting. Again, sightline is something that is not an established policy framework for defining a development. Parapet heights, prevailing heights, established heights, these are the terms that we use to define the character of an area and the capacity or the nature of development within an urban context. I'm afraid it's not something that we would use outside the context of a conservation area, or to define development as such. Chair.
Thank you, Michael. Councillor Seaton, are you?
All right. Well, again, I'm just conscious of time, but that's not the advice. Or on previous occasions.
I think it's probably best not to.
I know, right.
Yeah.
That's not the advice on previous occasions. Okay. So I'm surprised at Michael Takar's response, and I wanted to refer to other apps, but I realised that may not be appropriate now. But his response, I'm accepting his response, and it has coloured my view, but it also strengthened my view in terms of my initial attitude. And I'll leave it there, Chair. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Well, I think if there aren't any other members that have indicated that they wish to raise any additional questions or seek further clarification, so I think we're sort of moving into the realms of a motion. Do members like to put forward a motion? Is there any member that would like to put forward a motion, please?
Chair, are you seeking a motion?
I am for this.
Right,
particular
or you want
application.
us to express an opinion, maybe, first of all, on the application?
Well, we can let's express an opinion. Let's go through that. Come on in.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the time that's been spent, but it's been very worthwhile. I think, first of all, Chair, the issue of our policies has now been brought to bear here, that if a development which is owned by has the same ownership and it's been in the same ownership all along, notwithstanding the advice provided by officers, okay, provides a deficit on the amenity space, we'll take the new planning unit as our parameter, okay. But if a development, now that we created new planning unit, exceeds the 10 minimum, and therefore in this case 11 additional units, okay, the officers are arguing that we shouldn't take it as being a single planning unit, okay? And I believe that creates a contradiction, which is of course why these matters are brought to a committee of councillors like ourselves to make a final determination. I therefore must argue that that contradiction is unsatisfactory. It produces unsatisfactory results, and the potential is that a similar situation, which is not unlikely in any part of London or indeed the country, where a developer, an owner owns a series of buildings and then seeks to bring them into one to create a single unit. There should not be an opportunity for that developer to circumvent what is one of our core planning policies, certainly material policies, that where it exceeds 10, at least one of those should be truly affordable. Okay. So on that ground alone, Chair, I'll seek that if we were to accept the motion, we'll be setting a very dangerous precedent for Southwark. And that most certainly was not the intention when those policies were framed, that such a loophole should exist. So for that reason alone, I'd want to reject it. Second reason, Chair, I would want to reject it is, of course, on the last conversation I've had with the design officer. Okay. I'm minded, and I'm not often contradicting the design officer, but I'm minded to make note that on previous occasions where we discuss matters of design and sight lines, and that is the correct term, as opposed to fishing line, washing line effect, which is what was used by others. For the use the correct term, sight lines, officers have always consistently said that they would seek to see a consistency in sight lines, so that the view is clear for those who are standing from the conservation border, the bound of the conservation area, and are looking along a street. Okay, now I would argue that this development doesn't conform and harms the conservation area for that reason. And thirdly, Chair, I think that and it's not maybe not the applicant's fault, but maybe our own fault, that the lack of clarity over the ownership, okay, is a matter for consideration here. It may not be material, but it most certainly is a matter for consideration. But I believe that if officers have been aware that...
Well, can we at the moment stick to material considerations and planning considerations?
Yeah, I was about to link the
right. Right. Well, can I, to echo your refrain, absolutely. I'm conscious of time, so can we just stick to planning material considerations, please, yes. and not sort of make speculative comments.
Absolutely, Chair. I've been very careful with my wording. If officers had been aware that the building are in the same ultimate ownership, and the proposals for development, heights, design, and so on were coming from the same ultimate owner. I have to assume that the officer's view would have been coloured by that additional knowledge. Okay? The fact that the paperwork doesn't permit it, and therefore it therefore affected their view on the application. Okay? And I think my only last comment, Chair, in relation to the supporter, I think we established beyond doubt that the reason why the supporter was supporting the application was that the supporter would not have to make a contribution to the cost of cladding, which has been typically the case in cladding nationwide. And indeed, there would be a potentiality for an uplift in the value of the property as a result of the improvements.
Oh, that's highly speculative, Councillor Seaton.
I'm giving you my reasons why I would seek to reject the application, because it would set a very dangerous precedence on the creation of a new planning unit, which exceeds our minimum affordable home quantum. Okay, therefore, in this case, it's 10, and therefore gives the opportunity for potentially applicants, as was concurred by our legal officers, that if the number would been 10 in excess of our minimum, that potentially could not be considered. Now, I would have to argue that we should consider it, and for that reason alone, we should reject this application and let it be decided by an independent arbiter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Seaton. So I've given you the opportunity to comment. So I'll sort of go through members so that for transparency and equalities. Councillor, and in no particular order, it's just as I see you on my screen. Councillor Noakes, would you like to sort of make any final sort of comments regarding and give some sort of indication how you're likely to vote? If you wish to, please, before we do move to the vote ultimately. Councillor Noakes.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I hear Councillor Seaton's impassioned comments. I have to say I take a different view from him in regards to what I've heard from officers in regards to, I mean, I think we all share on this committee the desire for delivery of affordable homes, but the information that I've been provided with, or I've heard, and the way I've listened to that from officers, I believe that that is not an issue as such in this particular application. If I have concerns, it's around the height, and it's around any potential impact on the conservation area. But obviously, I've also heard from officers as to why they feel that those things are acceptable in this instance, and why, you know. So to be honest with you, my vote is hanging the way I vote. But so I will have to make my decision. I was listening to any of my colleagues and what they have to say, but yeah, I'm undecided at this moment. But I will obviously vote.
Well, you're within your right, and I appreciate and respect that. Councillor Limperpool, any final comments?
I think that my great concerns are again on the height and the huge impact that will have on the conservation area, and I think that it should be rejected.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mills, is there anything that you wish to say or add? Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I think I'm minded to vote in favour of granting permission. I guess we've heard a lot of contrary views in terms of the issues that Councillor Seaton was raising. But in terms of the kind of impact on the site, I think I have been convinced by the fact that this is a corner site. And in terms of height, that means that we might treat it slightly differently. So at this stage, I am minded to grant permission.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Councillor Islam.
Yes, Chair, I don't have any comments, Chair. I'm still.
Are you right? Okay. All righty. So do we have a motion to put forward? Can I invite a colleague to put forward a motion, please?
I'm happy to put a motion to reject, Chair, that you invite me to the stage.
Right, okay. And can you, well, you've already, can you just go through the reasons why, please, once again, regarding policy, and then I will ask if we've got a seconder for that, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move this motion to reject for the following reasons. One, that the application refers to a number of buildings which are creating a single planning unit, and for that reason, the planning unit, it creates a building in excess of 10 additional units, which means that beyond 10, the council should receive, as per policy, at least one affordable unit. The fact that it's that's point one, and point two, that the sight lines access to the boundaries of the conservation area will be significantly changed by the inclusion of this development, and will be detrimental and harms the conservation area. And in addition to that, of course, I also concur that the heights also is harmful to the conservation area. So, and for those three reasons, Chair, I cite as reasons for rejections.
Righto. Do we have a seconder for that, please?
Yes, Chair, I would like to second Councillor Seaton's.
Righto, thank you. So we've got a motion on the table, and there's that to reject the officer's recommendation.
Chair, before we move,
yeah, I was just about to say, does the legal officer wish to come in at this point, or indeed the planning officer, Dipesh Patel?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, before we move to a vote on this, whenever there's a suggestion of a refusal against an officer's recommendation to approve, I always do give a health warning, if you like, in the sense that there is a scope, obviously, that the applicant may appeal such a refusal. And we therefore need to consider very carefully the reasons for a refusal, assuming that the vote would be in that way. I mean, we don't know. We've got a proposer and a seconder. So can I suggest we move into a closed session, Chair, when we can have a discussion between members and officers about the reasons before we move to that vote. And we can advise a little bit further as to where we think we are.
Righto, John, thank you very much for that. So can I suggest that we withdraw to the pre-meeting link, please? Is that to the satisfaction of constitutional officers?
Yes, Chair.
Righto then. So colleagues, if we can now withdraw to